Very welcome, everybody. I think today we have a very topical issue. Sometimes we discuss matter with a wider philosophical relevance. Today we're talking about something which is actually on the parliamentary agenda right now. The use of stem cells for research and more specifically whether or not EU funding can be used for stem cell research. That is the issue which is being debated in Parliament. The lead committee in the European Parliament voted to retain the status quo, which means that EU funding can be used for stem cell research, but national governments can still ban it from their own territory. So it's essentially still the member states that decide, but at least what some of us had worried about, that it would be lost altogether, didn't happen. We still have to vote on this in plenary, and that is likely to take place in February or March. And I hope that today's debate will provide useful input for those who haven't made up their minds yet for the plenary vote.
The embryos that we use for research would have never become a person, either with or without embryonic stem cell research. They would have been either discarded or they would have never existed. So then the next question is it rejectable? Should an embryo always become a person? Should we do everything to make every embryo become a person? Well, apparently not, because we already freeze embryos for in vitro fertilization, for IVF treatments, and not all these embryos can be used. And even in a natural course of the human life, even natural embryos in more than 50% never become persons, because half of them fail to implant, and even after implantation, another 25% get lost spontaneously. So I come to the conclusion that embryonic stem cell research is required for the study of human development, drug research, and regenerative medicine, which can potentially save and improve the lives of millions of patients.
I'm not here today to talk about science. I'm not here today to talk about French legislation of human ESL, because in France the situation was really complicated, and it's still really complicated. So, and I think the French situation illustrates very well the difficulty and the complexity to legislate on the use of human ESL, and the difficulty to explain to the society the powerful and the useful of ESL.
I mean, we see that stem cell research, it's a promising area for regenerative medicine, particularly. It's a chance to treat diseases which we cannot cure today. And as you've heard, it's a very fast-moving field where there's substantial progress and where we're now seeing treatments for patients coming through. The Commission's position on the embryonic stem cell research is kind of an intermediate one between some of the countries with the most open research policies and those perhaps with the more restrictive ones.
So I think that we should have full freedom for researchers. That doesn't mean that there are no ethical considerations, but then indeed we should have a serious committee of ethics, and we should have a serious public and political debate about ethics, and we shouldn't start by restricting scientists.
Even more important ethical questions that we should be discussing. For example, one of the things that we talk about is the availability of the results and the cells themselves. Is availability equal in all the European countries and all over the world, or countries lagging behind, or is that even immoral to allow some countries to be behind? Then another very important thing, I think, is the ownership of the cells. So I think those are the things that we want to be discussing now, because this is what's going to be important in several years' time.
For me, the most important point is, can we use this cell to improve therapies for patients? When we will have this answer, we can talk about ethics, but for the moment we still need to work on this point.
The question is then also, apart from the ethical considerations, and I very much concur with you, whether we should be a bit more pragmatic as well, and look at the benefits, but also simply look at the dynamics of research, of economics, and what's going on in the world.